Imagine one family stashing away so much hidden wealth that when a whistleblower finally leaks it, billions of dollars are scattered across secret offshore accounts like monopoly money. That's the kind of wealth we're exploring today as we count down the wealthiest dynasties shaping Kenya's fortune. 8. The Ndegwa family, Kenya's banking and beer barons. If you've ever downed a Tusker lager in Nairobi on a warm evening, you've indirectly poured a little cash into the Ndegwa fortune. This family's wealth story is a fascinating cocktail of banking, beer, and old-school corporate positioning. It all started with the late Philip Ndegwa, an economist who somehow managed to be both a technocrat and a tycoon. While most people leave government jobs with little more than contacts and a pension, Philip leveraged his insider knowledge into high-level stakes across Kenya's financial sector. His family's biggest gem? A sizable position in NIC Bank, which later merged into NCBA, one of Kenya's largest banks. Banking may sound dry, but when you're pulling in fees and lending margins at scale, it's basically a printing press. Then there's their other crown jewel, a significant stake in East African breweries, the company behind Tusker. For decades, beer has been one of Kenya's most recession-proof businesses. People might cut back on holidays or shopping, but that evening pint? Not so much. The Ndegwas have built a portfolio that's deliberately boring. Banks, breweries, insurance, but boring in the most lucrative way. It's the type of wealth that doesn't make flashy headlines, but quietly compounds year after year. And here's the kicker. They've done all this while staying relatively low profile, without any tabloid scandals or flashy political battles. In a country where wealth often comes with drama, the Ndegwas are proof that sometimes the quietest barons are also the richest. Next up, we go from the man who owns the megaphone to a family that rewrote the ledger. This story has Goldenberg ghosts, offshore webs, and the juiciest billions you weren't meant to see. 7. The Moi family, from State House to secret stashes. Now, if the Ndegwas are the quiet barons, the Mois are the exact opposite. Think more along the lines of presidential palaces, political drama, and, oh yes, billions secretly tucked away in offshore accounts. Daniel Arap Moi ruled Kenya for 24 years, and let's just say he didn't leave office empty-handed. In 2021, the Pandora Papers revealed that the Moi family had quietly moved fortunes abroad. Not just a few million, but billions hidden in shell companies and secret trusts stretching from London to Luxembourg. Imagine opening the financial curtains one morning and realizing the family in State House had effectively been running a side hustle in global finance the whole time. Back home, their wealth is stitched into real estate and banking. The Moi family controls sprawling landholdings across the Rift Valley, plus stakes in local companies ranging from agriculture to insurance. They've also been linked to multiple top-tier properties in Nairobi, think high-rise towers and prime real estate that quietly rake in rent while everyone debates politics on Twitter. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Despite all the scrutiny and the leaks, the family remains immensely influential. Daniel's son, Gideon Moi, is still a powerful political player, and the Moi empire hasn't exactly crumbled under exposure. If anything, it's become a cautionary tale about how political power and money weave together in Kenya, often invisibly, until someone blows the whistle. You just saw politics turned into offshore finance. Now it's time we flip to hard, honest industry. Meet a family whose story might change how you see everyday things like soap and steel pipes. 6. The Chandaria family, Kenya's industrial giants. Here's a riddle. What do toilet paper, cooking oil, and steel pipes all have in common? They're all everyday essentials, and they've all been part of the Chandaria family's empire. If the Mois represent drama and the Ndegwas represent stability, the Chandarias represent pure industrial hustle. Manu Chandaria, the family patriarch, turned Comcraft Group into a multinational conglomerate stretching across Africa, Asia, and beyond. We're talking manufacturing plants in over 40 countries, producing aluminum, steel, plastics, and building materials. For decades, whenever a new apartment block or office tower went up in Nairobi, odds are Chandaria steel was in its bones. But what makes this family especially fascinating is how they've balanced hard-nosed business with philanthropy. Manu Chandaria is often dubbed Kenya's Rockefeller, not just for his wealth, but for his habit of giving a chunk of it away. The Chandaria Foundation has poured millions into hospitals, schools, and community projects, making their name almost as synonymous with charity as it is with commerce. And yet, behind all the benevolence lies an industrial logic. When you supply the building blocks of a country's economy, you don't just make money, you make yourself indispensable. Whether it's infrastructure projects in East Africa or consumer goods on supermarket shelves, Comcraft's fingerprints are everywhere. In a way, the Chandarias have built the skeleton of modern Kenya, and done it in a way that earns them both profits and praise. Not many families can balance capitalism and altruism quite like this. From factory floors to the corridors of power, next is the man who kept the keys to the palace. Joshua Kulei turned proximity into profit, quietly shaping who won contracts and who didn't. Curious how a gatekeeper becomes a magnate. Let's find out. 5. The Kulei family, power brokers' hidden fortune. Let's talk about a name that might not ring bells immediately, but whose influence runs deep. If the Chandarias built Kenya's skeleton, Joshua Kulei and his family were busy wiring the backroom deals that kept power flowing. Kulei was the longtime personal aide to President Daniel Arap Moi, and during those decades he wasn't just an assistant, he was the gatekeeper. Need access to the president? You went through Kulei. Need a government contract approved? Chances are Kulei's fingerprints were somewhere on the paperwork. Over time, this position translated into serious business interests. His family built wealth through real estate, banking stakes, and energy investments, many of which were shielded behind layers of companies and trusts. Like the Mois, whispers of corruption and hidden deals have always swirled around the Kulei empire. But here's the twist. Unlike the Moi, the Kuleis operate in near-total secrecy. They rarely appear in headlines, they don't flaunt their wealth, and they've managed to stay just outside the spotlight, which ironically makes them even more intriguing. It's the classic case of the power behind the throne, except in this case, the throne was literal. Today, the Kulei family continues to control assets that stretch across Kenya's economy, from agriculture to real estate. And while their fortune may not be as publicly celebrated as the Kenyattas or Chandarias, their story underscores one of Kenya's wealthiest truths. Sometimes the people pulling the strings in the background end up wealthier than the ones on stage. We've gone from steady capital to scandal to industrial muscle and behind-the-scenes influence. But the next four, they're the real deal. Media titans, banking dynasties, and the family that sits at the very top of Kenya's wealth pyramid. Don't blink. The crown jewel is just around the corner, but before that, here's number 4. 4. The Bwatt family, the mysterious moguls of Yaya. Not many fortunes are built in plain sight. Some of them hide behind glass walls and whispered rumors, and that's exactly where the Bwatt family comes in. Their crown jewel is Yaya Center, one of Nairobi's most iconic malls. To most people, it's just where you grab groceries, a coffee, or a quick shop. But behind those polished marble floors is one of the most secretive fortunes in the country. The Bwatt family have long been linked to Yaya's ownership, but the actual details of their empire are foggier than a morning in Limuru. Unlike Kenya's more flamboyant dynasties, the Bwatts don't splash their wealth around. They don't headline the papers, don't fight Twitter wars, don't show up with convoys of cars. Instead, they've mastered the art of quiet influence, pulling in steady rental income and commercial stakes while keeping the public guessing. Ask 3 different Nairobians about the family, and you'll probably hear 3 completely different origin stories. That air of mystery is exactly what makes them fascinating. Because in Kenya, where money and politics usually walk hand in hand, the Bwatts prove you can be rich, powerful, and still slip under the radar. Which raises the real question. Is secrecy their greatest asset? Or is it a curtain hiding much bigger plays? Well, if the Bwatts are the silent landlords of Nairobi, the next family is the opposite. Think Ferraris, primetime TV, mega malls, and a patriarch who loved being the loudest man in the room. Time to talk about Kirubi. 3. The Kirubi family, the flamboyant empire builders. Kirubi was a man who made his billions through Centum investments, malls like Two Rivers, and media stakes in Capital FM. But what really cemented his reputation wasn't just the deals, it was how he lived. Ferraris in the driveway, designer suits sharper than his one-liners, and social media posts that made younger CEOs feel like they weren't even trying. The family, led now by his heirs, continue to benefit from this empire of property, retail, media, and investments. Two Rivers Mall alone is practically a small city, complete with international brands and a scale that screams, "We don't do half measures here." Meanwhile, Centum remains a powerhouse across East Africa, from banking to real estate. But the Kirubi legacy is more than malls and money. Chris was a master of branding himself, long before influencers were a thing. He made being a tycoon look glamorous, something young Kenyans aspired to. Love him or hate him, you couldn't ignore him. Now, the big question is whether his family can sustain that same flair while keeping the business sharp. Because flashy lifestyles are great, but malls don't run on Instagram likes. And while the Kirubis gave us glitz, the next family gave us grit. They fought dictators, survived detentions, and turned political struggle into a dynasty. You know their patriarch as simply Baba. 2. The Odinga family, Kenya's political powerhouse. This is the family that proves that political power can sometimes be the richest currency of all. The Odinga dynasty began with Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Kenya's first vice president, who turned down independence-era compromises and cemented himself as a fiery opposition figure. His son, Raila Odinga, carried that torch, fighting for democracy through detentions, exile, and endless campaigns. Today, Raila isn't just a politician, he's Baba, with a cult-like following that cuts across generations. The family's wealth is closely tied to this political clout. With business stakes in energy, manufacturing, and real estate, they've built serious fortunes alongside their political careers. But their true influence can't be measured in shillings. It's in the streets they can fill at a moment's notice, the elections they can tilt, and the governments they've shaped just by refusing to go away. Critics say the Odingas play both sides, railing against dynasties while being one themselves. But whether you see them as reformers or power players, their mark on Kenya is undeniable. Few families have survived this many decades of political storms while still commanding this much influence. And while Raila himself has yet to win the presidency, the family's legacy and their fortune guarantees that the Odinga name isn't leaving Kenyan politics anytime soon. Which brings us to the big one. If Raila is Baba, our number one family are the undisputed monarchs of money. Their empire stretches across land, banking, hotels, and even the secrets of the Pandora Papers. It's finally time to talk about the Kenyattas. 1. The Kenyatta family, the crown jewel of Kenyan wealth. And the crown jewel of our countdown is finally here, a family you were all waiting for. Rich is certainly a small word for the Kenyattas, as they're the richest group in Kenya, with a fortune estimated at over $2.5 billion. It all began with Jomo Kenyatta, Kenya's founding president, whose grip on power set the stage for the family's vast empire. Over the decades, the Kenyattas amassed prime land across the country, some say as much as 500,000 acres. Add in major stakes in banking, media, hotels and dairy, and you've got a portfolio that touches nearly every corner of Kenyan life. But the real shocker came in 2021, when the Pandora Papers leak revealed how the family used offshore companies and secretive accounts to quietly move and hide wealth. For many Kenyans, it was a reminder that while politicians talk about corruption, some of the richest play the game better than anyone. Today, the dynasty is headed by Uhuru Kenyatta, former president, who remains a central figure in Kenyan politics. The family owns Brookside Dairy, the country's largest milk processor, along with major stakes in Commercial Bank of Africa, hotels like Heritage, and, of course, vast land holdings that make them Kenya's ultimate landlords. The Kenyattas are a dynasty in the truest sense, wealth, politics, and power rolled into one. And while critics question just how much of that wealth was built fairly, there's no denying they sit atop the pyramid. And there you have it. from secretive landlords and flamboyant tycoons to fiery reformers and billionaire presidents. These were the 8 richest families of Kenya. Which one of these fascinated you the most? Let us know in the comments, and for more such interesting peeks into the lives of the rich, take a look at the channel.